But I want to get some personal background first for this interview because I don't really remember when it was we met. But I seem to recall a long time ago I saw you and Jason going into Cup of Joe on Hillsborough Street in Raleigh, where I used to live when I didn't really have a life for a long time. And I would see you guys come in while I was drawing and stuff, and I was like, those two guys seem like they're nice people. They seem like they just seem kind of interesting. And I don't remember how we even met, but do you remember when we met and what the circumstances were?
I think it was just merging of the coffee groups at Cup of Joe in Raleigh. I think someone just introduced us who knew us both.
Yeah. And then I learned about what you had done because at that point, I think, I'm not sure, but I think you had moved to Raleigh and you had lived in Greenville before that?
Yeah, I lived in Greenville. I went to school in Greenville, so like 92, 93 to around 2000. I lived in Greenville, and I moved to Raleigh. I went on tour with Jason's band, the Ladderback.
Right.
And then when I got back from that, most of my friends moved to Wilmington. Brad from Bifocal Media, the other founder, moved to LA, or he moved to San Francisco, and I was just like, I was close friends with the Ladderback guys, and they all lived in Raleigh, so I moved in with Jay, and yeah, that's how I moved to Raleigh. So I guess that was 2001, maybe.
So that was almost 20 years ago.
Right.
Wow. It's a long time. And then I learned that you had done a lot of stuff because you had this a record label and Bifocal Media. Then it was purely a record label, but you also had these skills where, you made videos and you shot bands and filmed them, and you had already done all this stuff, put out all these records, made all these like DVDs, I guess. I guess maybe there were videos at that point too, but
yeah,
VHS.
we did a lot of we made movies, and we did a lot of video work for other music industry people, and I did a lot of action sports, freelance videography and production.
So you were basically making a living sort of doing freelance work, doing these projects, but you also had Bifocal Media, and you already at that point had a lot of stuff under your belt, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I weaseled my way into a lot of cool situations, I guess. Yeah.
Well, no, it was impressive because I didn't really know we're I think you were we're 10 years apart, maybe. Something like maybe a little more. 35? You said 35? Thanks.
45.
45 years apart.
No, I'm 45 years old.
You're eternally 25 years old. Well, the point being, I'm bringing this up is because you did all this stuff, and I remember just going, wow, that's pretty impressive, And I really hadn't met a lot of people up until meeting you that had that kind of drive. So it was very fortunate in a way that I twisted your arm and kind of forced you to put out 2 or 3 of those man-child books before the recording industry crashed.
I think you were talking about us being a few years apart in age or whatever, and I think I kind of became a pseudo adult during the era of 90s weirdo living room hardcore punk, I guess my Black Flag would be Born Against or something, and that whole era was there was this level of underground rock that was in the clubs that was Jesus Lizard, Dinosaur Juniors, Super Chunk. There was this level that was playing at Cat's Cradle and stuff like that. But there was this enormous explosion of punk or whatever that was like below that, and there were and the bands that we worked with were part of that, and they were, you know, I'm sure that it still exists now, but I mean, there were like thousands of really well put together magazines and record labels, and bands played, and like bands did like 50-date tours where they just played living rooms and churches and rented halls and stuff. I mean, I'm sure it was kind of like that in the 80s at some point, but I haven't seen anything close to that then or since. Before that, I didn't see that, you know. So it was not like weird to have a record label in the mid 90s.
It was kind of, yeah. I see what you mean, because not everybody had a record label, and there were more people doing those kind of things. But, you know, there's definitely, you know, I can't even really say that. I was going to say, well, there's less now. Well, I don't even actually really know that.
I don't know either. I don't know what people do.
No, I want to say, well, there's obviously less because I said so. But at the time, yeah, you're right. The 90s, there was that whole scene that I wasn't really aware of. But it definitely had echoes of everything that happened before and happened since. And what was it about all that stuff that made you want to get involved and spend all your time devoted to releasing music and filming bands and releasing DVDs?
Well, I did a radio show, so I did a college radio show, so I was always buying new music. And the central theme of the radio show was kind of like that mid-90s weirdo rock stuff. Kind of like Slint on amphetamines or something, I guess. It was, most of the music sounded kind of like that.
Yeah, but, or Drive Like Jehu.
Right. I think they were kind of a part of it. They were another one of those like big bands from that scene. They were like the upper crust of that era. But so I always bought music, and then there was no place in our town really for bands to play, and we had a couple of friends that started just going into the magazines and reaching out to bands saying, come to my little crappy redneck college town to play. So, and then at some point we put out a video. The first Bifocal release was a video, and it did better than we were comfortable with it doing. Like we put it out, and it was all these bands that we thought were these little bands, but then a lot of them started getting big, and we sold a lot of videos like fast, and we were just like, oh God, like we didn't have a bank account or anything. We didn't have it. I didn't have an email address. Like I did not want to run a record label. You know, you
just fell into it.
Yeah, and then through working on this video that had like, I don't know, 15 bands, at least half of whom went on to become big, like selling. When I say big, I mean they started selling like 50 to 100,000 records, which was pretty big for, you know, people who played living rooms. But so that developed a lot of connections, and then there was nobody doing these videos for that level of rock. So people started getting in touch with us. All these other record labels started reaching out to us to do work for them. Yeah. So it just kind of snowballed. And then we started putting out records for bands that were in the videos. And I don't know. I mean, I had a part-time job through all this. I worked at Sears selling lawnmowers and stuff for like 10 years. From like the time I was 16 until I was 26, I worked at Sears. But that was commission based. So even that was like, you're in charge of how much money you make. You can go in and dick around and make minimum wage, or you can bust ass. I think the year that I left Sears, which was 2001, I think my average pay was $24 an hour, and that was 2001, because I just got there and I worked my ass off, and then I went home. And if somebody didn't show up for work, I didn't say, hey, so-and-so's not here, we need help. I just let people line up and buy lawnmowers from me. So, I mean, even then I felt I was kind of self-employed, you know.
Then you came
What was
to
the
Raleigh.
question? I don't remember what the question
Oh
was.
no, we're just talking. This is good. This is because like I actually don't know some of these things, so it's kind of good. And if I find this interesting, I'm sure there's probably 10 people watching this.
There's at least 10 people who are going to watch it before the internet blows up.
I thought that
if we get 10 hits, I'm stoked. 10 hits.
Exactly. So you moved to Raleigh in the early 2000s, and I just remember that you were very busy. You've always been a very busy, self-motivated, self-employed sort of person. And I think you had a job for a little while after the recording industry crashed. And
Okay.
at some point after you had moved here, I don't remember when, but we had worked together, on the books, and there was still a time period where we were going to pay for the books, or you were, by getting magazines and record labels to buy ad space in 3 of the Man-Child books. And then right at the very last one, as the last one was coming out, something had changed. And
it was number 4 with the Melvins CD. It was huge.
Right.
And Lumberjack, our distributor, Lumberjack Mortem.
Right. We lost a lot of money.
Yeah, they went out of, well, they basically talked me into doing that last book with them, and then they just didn't pay for it, which sucked because that, you put that much money and time into a project and it does that well. I think the first batch just sold out like that. So I was like, yes, there's this windfall of money for me and you. And then we just didn't get any of that money because they went bankrupt. Now, if any of those folks are watching this, if they're one of 10 people.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be out there just waiting to hear what you have to say.
To their credit, I think that the upper crust of Lumberjack Mortem was good folks. And they did fund the label to start it. They gave us a big chunk of money to start Bifocal in the beginning. So,
right.
But that was because I had a lot of eggs in the Bifocal basket. So when they went out bankrupt and that year's salary or whatever was just gone all of a sudden, I got a job working for Apple Computers. I used my amazing personality and my video skills.
You're sparkling.
For 2 years, I trained people on how to use Apple software to make movies and stuff.
Yeah.
And that was neat because, that was fun.
Well, I remember that happened like after Lumberjack went belly up. That sort of took the wind out of the sails of the recorded music, releasing music aspect of Bifocal. Am I wrong, or
I got a new distributor through Red Eye Distribution, which I think is like one of the last men standing in the independent distribution area. And they still distribute our stuff now, but I haven't put out any records or anything like that in
a long time.
Yeah, I think the last thing was probably Man-Child 5, the one about COC in Raleigh. I think that was the last Bifocal release that wasn't a T-shirt.
That was a book.
It was a book.
It wasn't a CD.
No. But yeah, that was the end of an era. And then we moved to Asheville.
Yes.
And when we moved to Asheville, I took a real job, my first big boy job, which was directing an ad agency. That was still in Raleigh, so I commuted. And I did that for 2 years. And then when that ended, I busted ass to get back into Bifocal, and that's all I do now again. So.
Right. So Bifocal is still around, but now the focus seems like it's shifted purely. 90% of it is T-shirts.
Shirts and a couple freelance video, TV show gigs a year.
Now, how did I don't remember really the specifics, but how did that start? I just remember.
You really want me to tell people my version of how that started? So I knew
Why
this guy.
not?
I knew this guy, Brian Wellsby, and
That guy.
no, you okay. So here's my take on it. You had this. You were a guy that I hung out with, and I had done like 3 books with or something,
Yeah.
3 or 4, and you had this profile in this hard to crack industry, which is, you know, the weirdo underground rock industry where people don't trust people, you know, like people have been ripped off. and especially like the kind of revered 80s, early 80s hardcore scene. It's kind of like, I don't know, I've heard you say this and I agree. I think it's probably one of the most endearing rock and roll genres of the past, you know, 50 years is probably this weird fascination that people have with hardcore punk, you know, especially like the early stuff. People, and you know, to people our age, a lot of those folks were like celebrities, you know, like you couldn't just reach out and like it didn't seem like, for people like me, it didn't seem like I could just reach out and get in touch with Keith Morris or you know, or Henry Rollins or Jay Mascis or any of these people that we talk to like 4 times a week now with work or whatever. Like those were like superstars to me when we started doing this. You know, they still are, but I mean, they weren't easy access people. And the point is you had access to all these people. And you had you had a style that people recognize with your art, and you had an artistic profile, which some people call themselves artists their entire lives, and they never really get a profile. They never have an identity, and they definitely never crack a niche market like you had. But I don't think you recognized any of that. I think you were just like this weird coffee drinking savant that sat at the coffee shop and drew these. Even though you had.
Can I use that? Can I use that?
This is coming back to your initial question.
Coffee drinking savant. I like that. I want to use that.
So like, I remember, I think we were drinking coffee and I was like, I had just done a job for Volcom, the clothing company. And they were like $1 billion company. And someone had told me when I was doing this job that they started by just doing t-shirts. So I think we were drinking coffee and you were talking about Buzz or something, or you might have been talking to Buzz on your phone and hung up, and we were drinking coffee, and I was like, and you still worked at a grocery store and you hated it. I remember that.
Yeah.
And I was like, why don't you just quit and sell art? You have this big profile, like build yourself a website or pay somebody there. I was just like, you have things that most artists never get, and you're not capitalizing on it. Not like in terms of money or gratification. You're just not, other than the books we had done, you know, which obviously weren't big money makers. I mean, we made a little, but we weren't living off the books. So I was like, I tell you what, you just talked to Buzz. I was like, draw something for a Melvin's t-shirt and ask Buzz if we can put it on a shirt. Just do it. Just trust me. Do it. And you did it. And you got permission, and we put it up. And then, like, what was it, maybe 3 weeks later, I was like, Brian, here's a check for $2,000. Thanks. And I remember you were just like, $2,000 for what? You know, like,
I was shocked.
I was like, and I didn't do it because I wanted $2,000 or I wanted to start a t-shirt company. I think at the time I was pretty flush with like video work and comfortable, at least, with my, you know, $500 a month rent. But then I think right after that, I think you kind of like, you were surprised.
I was.
I think a week later, after you got that check, you were like, the Descendants want to do a shirt. So this is like, what, 10 years ago at least?
I think it was more than 10 years. No, it was probably No, it was about 10 years ago. Yeah, it
And I
was
was
literally.
like, I don't know, because you just did the drawing. I had to package up 300 shirts and ship them out and do all the accounting and dealing with people. So
Right, but everybody got paid the same.
right, everybody gets, yeah, because that's the way I
You
ran
did,
the record label.
yeah, you did all the work.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that when you offered to do a Descendant shirt, I was like, this is going to sell out fast, and I'm going to have to spend a week shipping these shirts out.
Right.
But I said yes, and then that one was like, boom, sold out in like 4 days, the Descendants. And
It
then like
was,
that, I have a list of all of them right here. I have a list of every shirt we've done with like the order numbers and when different piles of them came in. So I can, if they're limited edition, you have to know how many you've done. So, but we just kept doing shirts, and then I think I didn't stop really doing the shirts like that until I took that ad agency job, and then you started doing your own shirts for a minute, so you could experience the pleasure of shipping.
the extreme pleasure. You were way better at it than I was, that's for sure. But along the way, after you agreed to be a glutton for more punishment, then other people started showing up, other artists, and I think Chris Sherry.
I wasn't until I left the ad agency job and the money that comes with it, running an ad agency, just went away, that I was like, okay, I got family to deal with, and I don't have a job at Sears anymore.
Right.
So that's when I started reaching out to other artists and people because honestly, the reason that I felt like it was worth splitting the money evenly across the board is, to me, it wasn't just a Melvin shirt, number one. It was a Brian Walsby Melvin shirt. And the point of all that was like, I wanted you to see that your name meant something to people. You know what I mean? Like, it was worth something to have doodled in magazines and record covers for 10 years. It was valuable. And I that's why I started doing the shirts, was to help you out. But now it's an enormous beast of a company.
Yeah, yeah. And now you've just kind of drifted into, this is your only job, I guess. This is
Yeah. And at least once a year, an old client will ask me to do video work, and I'll say yes. And then I'll white knuckle it for like a week trying to remember how to do that stuff. But like at this point, I'm working with hold on. I'm working with like 20 different visual artists, and every one of them brings a different group of bands to the table. So, and now with the pandemic, bands that normally before wouldn't really want to be bothered with something that's only going to make them a few $1,000. Now they're like, wow, that's a few $1,000. So everyone's eager to do shirts now.
Especially when they just sit back and let somebody else basically do everything. So how many shirts do you think Bifocal has done now at this point?
As of today, we are on number 224.
God damn.
Which just went up today, which is your
7 seconds.
The Crew Redux 2020. Available.
The crew is me. The crew is you. Yeah, we're the crew.
Yeah, that happened today.
That's a lot.
But yeah, it's like the last few have been like, well, it's gotten to the point now where we're dealing with managers of these big bands, and these managers, like somebody who manages Dinosaur Jr. also manages like 8 other big bands. So now it's to the point where the managers are looking for stuff for their bands. So the managers are coming to me with these big, huge bands that I love that I never would have been able to get hold of before. We're doing shirts for. So
yeah,
cool.
That's cool, man. I mean, like the reputation of Bifocal is really good, because the entire time that we've done stuff together, working with all these bands, defunct and new and current and whatever, at least to me, it seems like everybody's been pretty pleased with how things have gone. Like nobody seems to think that anything
Good.
big thing Shifty is going on. So that's a real testimony to mainly you know,
Well,
because
there's a couple of things that I think a lot of bands aren't used to when it comes to merch or whatever. I mean, I don't think that when I've dealt with people who want to use Bifocal as just a company to make the shirt happen and ship the shirt, when I tell them that I'm going to give them, you know, half of the money or whatever, they're like, what? Like that's not a normal thing apparently. I don't know, because I don't work in the garment industry other than this. But to get half of the profits or a third of the profits, like if I split it with you and the Melvins or you and 7 Seconds or whatever, 33%, like that's a lot apparently for merch. So then people get paid fast, because I don't want to owe anybody any money. So if I owe you whatever, $800 for something, I'm not going to take $800 out of the account and put it in my account until you get your money. So I'm eager to pay you, because my rule is I don't get paid until everyone else involved is paid.
Yeah.
So, and that I think people appreciate. I think people appreciate the fact that I'm overly cautious about clearing everything art-wise, and just to make sure I had one member of a band call me, I think, throughout this whole thing, freaking out because other members of the band hadn't cleared a shirt with them. And when you've done 224 shirts, you figure there's at least 3 people in every band. That's a lot of people you're dealing with. So
yeah,
I don't really, aside from somebody just like, I don't think I've ever just said no. If there's a shirt design I don't like and I don't think anybody's going to buy it, I say no, because I don't want to lose money. But other than that, I mean, if someone says, we want to do it on this kind of shirt, sure. Someone says, can you send me 30 shirts to meet me on tour? Sure. Can you, it's not worth losing the impossible to acquire relationships over anything really. It's just like, because most of the time one shirt leads to a lot of other shirts in the future. So.
Yeah, because if people buy one shirt that they're interested in, they might find one other shirt or 2 other shirts, or
Oh, and as far as customers or whatever go, yeah. I mean, there's a couple guys who buy almost every shirt that comes out, to the point where I'm like trying to find free stuff to give them that I haven't already shipped to them. Like I need to do a Bifocal shirt, just has our logo on it, just as like an appreciative gesture, because I mean, there are people I've woken up in the morning before and there's been like an order for like $400 worth of shirts from one person. That's happened. And I'm like, geez.
Yeah. And it's and since this whole year has started, we haven't even gotten into this year yet, but it almost seems like even with the pandemic and what's happened to people that actually play music, it almost seems like business has stayed the same, or maybe is even better. Is that
it's
how it's
better?
been for you?
It's easier to get the shirts done because people are more focused on, okay, what can I do with this band, this legacy that I have, or whatever it is, to bring in income that I'm not getting because of the changes in our world. Which brings me to Donald Trump. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, some of the interviews we've talked a little bit about the pandemic and politics and stuff, and then it got kind of boring after a while, because it was like, well, it's not even making me really feel better, and this is way more interesting, to be honest.
Well, I feel like, honestly, we're in a situation now where if you can't people always talk about fake news, and I'm like, it doesn't even need any sort of like guidance. Just watch the people in charge speak for 10 minutes. And when they're done speaking, you don't call bullshit, then we're just not on the same like planet as far as our thought processes are concerned. So that's the way it's boring to me too. Like, I'm like, you just saw him say that, and you can form your own opinion on if that guy's a douchebag or not.
But anyway, yeah, so this year it's like, other than taking care of your family and spending probably endless hours in this room I'm looking into, not much has really changed, it seems like. Yeah, look at that.
No, just, I mean, I've dedicated a lot more time to it because I can't do anything else. We're out in the country, so we're kind of isolated from.
But that's awesome. I mean, not the isolation part, but the fact that this, especially this year, has turned out to be such a nice thing to have on your side. You know, does that make sense? And
Yeah,
it's something that
it's a perfect business for a pandemic survival.
What is that?
This is a perfect business for pandemic survival. I mean,
It's a perfect business for a pandemic survival.
It sucks that I can't hire people because
Yeah.
I need to, but whatever. I just work at night now if I have to. So, and I don't, you know, I have I think like 7 shirts lined up now, waiting to come out that I'm just not in a rush to get out because I can't keep up. So it's not a bad problem to have.
I think that's what they call a luxury problem.
Right.
Here. Okay. Last question. You told me the story a long time ago, and I never really asked a whole lot about it, but the whole bizarreness aspect of it wants me to put it up here in this interview. Can you tell me about what it was like to work for Donny Osmond, how that happened, and what were you doing for Donny Osmond? How did working for Donny Osmond come about?
So my friend Brad, who's one of the other guy that started Bifocal back in '97, he moved to LA and started his own career doing film and video work out there. And at some point, he was offered a job doing video for Donny Osmond. So basically, the job was to do these synchronized videos that played together behind Donny. For each song, there was a different video that had to be done. So Brad got the job, and they asked, do you know any other motion graphics / video producers that might want to be on board with this? And I said, yeah. He asked me, and I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I started working remotely from Raleigh, and I did one of these videos for one song. I think it was actually Crazy Horses, which is an awesome song. But no, it wasn't the version like that the Osmonds did. It was like a new, like, Crazy Horses. Like they turned it into like the horse was like a love beast or something. It wasn't like, because the original was a political song about cars. Polluting the environment, but they turned it into like a love, like man song, you know, like crazy. But anyway, I did the video for behind Donny for Crazy Horses, and they liked it so much that they flew me out to LA to be like the official editor for these behind Donny things. So I had to do a bunch of them. So that's why I was working for Donny Osmond. That's how it happened.
So, what was a conversation with Donny Osmond like? I'm saying this because I like Donny Osmond actually. I do like some of those hard rock Osmonds records of the early '70s. Right.
The prog rock record that came out after Crazy Horses. I forgot the name of that one. Anyway, so I didn't know about these records when I was working with them. That sucks because I would have gotten them to sign I would have made sure that I got signature. But
they're interesting records, that's for sure.
All I knew about was the Osmond, Donny and Marie show, because that's one of my earliest television memories.
All right.
So anyway, there's different levels of. I've worked with famous people in like the media industry a little bit, but there's different levels of like famous people. I mean, like mega famous people. I'm not talking about like underground famous people. There's like the guy who busted his ass and worked for 15, 20 years and then became famous through hard work and skill and talent and just being cool. Then there's like the level of famous person that's like overnight success. Like shitty band writes one catchy song. All of a sudden they think that they're entitled to this fame, and they're, you know, overnight success story is another level that I've worked with. And
Sure.
that level is a fucking nightmare to work with.
I'm sure.
Then there's this weird level that Donny Osmond is on, and I've worked with a few of these people, mega star, and they are so famous, and they have been so famous for so long that they don't know what it's like to be a normal person, but they really want to know what it's like to be a normal person. Like they desperately want to appear like an average, like Joe, even though they have no idea how to, they're completely socially inept, like a lot of these people. So, I mean, they get away with it because they have tons of talent and influence, a lot of them, and they can do no wrong, you know, like they just have enough money to get themselves out of any pit they dig themselves into, and, you know, whatever. So Donny Osmond is one of those people. He's been famous. He was like the white Michael Jackson or whatever, you know?
He totally was. He was, when I was a kid, he was the white, he was like the white Michael Jackson.
Here's an example of what it was like. And then we'll wrap it up because I got daughters out there watching an iPad for.
Got it.
So we would work on these videos all day. There was like me and like 7 or 8 other media producers in this soundstage in Burbank, and there was offices, and we were in like cubicles nerding out, working on these things, and they would bring in stock footage. And then at the end of every day, like the band and Donny were in the soundstage rehearsing for this big, it was like a big TV series show. It was like an NBC Christmas, whatever.
Christmas with Donny?
I don't know what, it was just some big concert. And so at the end of every day, the stage manager for the production, Donny, and the video producer of the whole shebang, my boss, would come in and sit behind me and say, let's see what you did today. Let's see what we've got for this song. And I would, you know, at this point, I've been there for like 13, 14 hours working on this stuff. And I'd be like, all right, you know, push play on the computer. And then they would watch it and they would say, stop that. Oh, I like that. How did you do that? Whatever. They'd get, you know, they get stoked on it or whatever they do. And like, they'd suggest things that needed to be changed. And you know, I noticed like during the first few days that when Donny got real excited about something, he would just slap the shit out of my back. He'd be like, "Oh, there, buddy," you know, like when you like a backslapper. But it would startle the shit out of me because I'd be like really engrossed and nerding out in this video, and plus a little bit nervous at first because my 3 bosses are behind me. Like out of nowhere, just like, what did you do? Show me what you did. What are we paying you for? Like, show us the goods, basically. So I'd be like, yeah, and then it would finish, and I'd be like waiting for critique or whatever. And then every time Donny would be like, whack, love it. He would say, love it, good work. And then he would just fucking leave. Like, if he was stoked, he wouldn't even stick around. He would just hightail it out. Like, I got shit to do. Like, I'm going to get in the limo and go.
He does, man. Donny Osmond.
Mormons do. So like, yeah. So it got to the point where near the end, like the last week, I was like, you know, you've been working on this shit, stuck with these people for weeks, and you're just kind of like, you're still appreciative of the money, and like, you know that there's a lot worse things you could be doing, but you're just like, you start to get fried. So by the end of it, I think like, I showed him something. And I was like, okay, I'm going to hit play. I'm going to play this video for you, Donny.
Don.
Yeah, and you've seen it. You know, this is like one of the last cuts of this. So I know you're probably going to like it, but I do not want you to slap me on the back after you've seen it, because that sucks. That's like it.
It
Just no
hurts.
clue about how hard he was hitting me. He was just, he's a strong, fit superstar. But anyway, it was mostly the startling thing at first. So I played it for him, and it was like the last song or whatever. And then at the end of it, he was like, whack, love it, and just hauled ass out of the studio. I think that was the last time I spoke to Donny Osmond.
Well, I love that. I love that story.
Right. Yeah, I never met Marie. I would have liked to her. I don't know. Might have been fun.
Yeah, I've watched several Osmonds documentaries, and they're all very interesting. The whole story is just really bizarre. Any of them are really good. All right. Well,
you could just watch that Crazy Horses video that's on Facebook.
the record you're referring to, I think it's called The Plan.
That's the one after Crazy Horses. I have that one too.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
Crazy Horses is awesome. What's that song? Hold Her Tight. Yeah. Holy shit! It's like Stevie Wonder meets Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. They were good.